Parker Schnabel is not just chasing gold. He is building something bigger. Over the last few years, he became one of the biggest landowners in the Klondike, and he has been hunting for one massive project to match that move. After 5 years of looking, he finally landed it. On paper, this should be the moment everyone celebrates. In reality, every step forward now comes with higher risk, higher costs, and a clock that never stops. Winter is always on its way. Fuel burns whether you hit gold or not. And when you run heavy iron day and night, the repair bills come no matter what the weigh table says. That pressure only grew when Parker took on a huge debt to scale up. He aimed his future at Dominion and committed around $15 million to that ground. It is a bet that turns each week of work into a test. The target is simple: keep the plant fed, keep the trucks rolling, and keep the cut stable long enough to stack ounces before freeze-up. The challenge is everything that gets in the way: water, mud, breakdowns, logistics, and the kind of unknowns you only meet when you pull the lid off a valley that remembers the Ice Age. The bigger the ground, the bigger the stakes. Success is not just about one big nugget or a lucky streak. It is about making clean, fast decisions under pressure so the season stays alive. That is where this story starts. A huge project finally lands. The crew is ready. The plan looks sharp, and then the ground answers back in its own way. What they find under the permafrost is more than pay dirt. It is a reminder that the valley holds more than gold, and that the toughest fights do not always look like fights at first. They start as a drip of water, a soft patch of muck, a layer of frozen ground that keeps its secrets until it doesn't. Keep that in mind as we go deeper, because everything that follows comes down to one simple question: can Parker outwork the ground without letting the ground outsmart him? But before the problems, there were clues. The first clue looked like a curve of polished bone sleeping in the cold. Gold mining can dig up the past, literally. While chasing pay streaks through frozen gravel, Parker and his crew have pulled out finds that belong in a museum. The most striking of these are woolly mammoth tusks. Imagine the excavator peeling back a layer of permafrost and a pale arc sliding out of the wall. Heavy, curved, smooth like glass where time protected it. That is the kind of discovery that stops a crew cold. It tells everyone that this cut is not just rock, sand, and gold. It is a timeline. These tusks are not rare story pieces dreamed up for TV. In the north, permafrost can preserve fossils for thousands of years. When a miner hits the right layer, those fossils can come out in remarkable shape. The ivory has real value on the market, and pristine pieces can draw eye-watering prices. But money is not the only measure. Parker has talked about how he treats these finds. The permits can be complex, and the history matters. That is why he does not race to sell. He sets them aside and respects what they represent. The crew sees it too. They spend most days thinking in yards, gallons, and hours. A tusk changes that mindset for a moment. Suddenly, the pit is not just a job site. It is a book. Every bucket is a page. Down here is a piece of an animal that walked this valley before bulldozers or wash plants existed. That kind of reminder does not slow the season forever, but it does add care to the work. It pushes the team to watch the walls, handle the ground with patience, and remember that some layers are more fragile than they look. These finds also tell you something practical. If you are meeting Ice Age material, you are in the zone where permafrost acts like a barrier and a trap. It locks the wall in place until the wrong slice releases it. It holds back water until it cracks and lets that water through. Tusks are a warning sign as much as a wonder. They say you are close to the old stuff, so respect it. That warning lands because Parker is not the only one finding these fossils. Across the valley, another miner pulled a tusk that said the same thing in a louder voice. And that brings us to a dig at Paradise Hill, where the ground spoke up again. Tony Beats, a veteran Klondike miner, was opening new ground at Paradise Hill when something bright and curved stuck out of the face. At first glance, it could have passed for a strange root or a broken jawbone. But after careful digging, the crew pulled it free, and the truth showed. It was another woolly mammoth tusk, thick and heavy. More proof that Ice Age history sleeps in the same layers modern miners chase for gold. Experts connected it to nearby remains, and the valley's timeline became easier to see. This land has been stacking stories for tens of thousands of years, and mining is one of the fastest ways to turn those pages. Why does that matter for Parker's season? Because geology does not respect property lines. If one crew is hitting Ice Age layers, other crews along the same glacial paths can expect similar ground. Miners say they read the cut for a reason. A tusk, a patch of frozen wood, a wet seam in the wall. Each sign tells you what comes next. It could mean more water. It could mean softer muck under a hard crust. It could mean a hidden shaft from older work. In every case, it means slow down, get the pumps ready, and plan your sump like it is your lifeline. This is where a lot of people outside mining get surprised. They think the big risks are rock slides or blizzards. Those are real, but the most dangerous enemy in a placer pit is often water. It sneaks through tiny paths and grows fast. When the permafrost layer is intact, it can hold water back like a dam. But chip that layer the wrong way, and the dam is gone. The wall starts to bleed. The floor goes slick. The sump cannot keep up. Suddenly, you are not mining dirt. You are mining a lake. Parker's crew heard the valley's message. They added pumps. They cut deeper sumps. They watched the wall and checked the berm that kept the old pond at bay. And they kept moving with purpose. Because even when the ground warns you, the season does not stop. The plant still needs feed. The crew still needs hours. The question is whether the operation can stay in control while the ground pushes back. History keeps a crew humble. Legends keep a crew going. When the cuts turn messy, miners lean on the stories that prove a single seam can change everything. Parker got a shot of that belief far from home, and it came in the shape of a giant once-in-a-lifetime nugget. In Australia, while filming Parker's Trail, Parker stepped into a different kind of history. He met the legend of the Welcome Stranger, the largest alluvial gold nugget ever recorded. The original was found near Molliagle in 1869 by two miners working rugged ground with simple tools. It was so large it had to be broken to get a weight at the bank. The nugget was later melted into bars, but two careful replicas survive today. There is something about seeing that shape, the mass, the curves, the way the rock fills the space that reaches past logic and hits the heart. For a miner living through a tough week, a legend like the Welcome Stranger works like fuel. It does not promise a miracle, it proves a miracle can happen. That difference matters. It reminds the crew that persistence is not blind hope, it is a method. Move yards, keep the plant healthy, keep the pad clean so the loader and the trucks do not waste time. Watch your screens and mats, respect the water and the wall. Do those things long enough and the odds tilt your way. Parker carried that lesson back to the north. He would need it, because the next cut he took on had pay 30 feet down, an old pond pressing against a thin berm, and a frozen wall that offered a truce only as long as it stayed frozen. It looked like a clean, hard push to $1 million target. It behaved like a trap. The crew planned their sump. They staged an 8-inch pump. They moved with pace. Then the ground chose its moment. If you want to know how a season can swing in a single night, the Wolf Cut has the answer. The Wolf Cut was a 4-acre prize with pay buried deep and a clock ticking loud. The team had to strip 1,000 yards of overburden to reach a gravel layer that might pay the season. The risk was water. A pond sat close, held back by a narrow berm. The wall carried a skin of permafrost that kept things firm for a while. The plan was simple on paper. Dig down, carve a sump, drop in an 8-inch pump, and keep the face dry enough to load steady into the plant. For a few shifts, it worked. Then the wall opened. A hole appeared. The kind that does not look like much until it is everything. A hidden mine shaft or a seam in the wall let the water loose. It came fast. Mud and water surged in. The sump fought to keep up, but the volume kept rising. By morning, the pit was a lake. The pump was under 4 feet of water. A single clogged filter meant the heart of the plan sat drowned at the bottom of a cut that used to be a path to profit. This is the nightmare miners know well. It is not loud. It is not dramatic at first. It is silence, a slow rise, a sheen of mud turning to a deep brown mirror. While the crew scrambled, more water pushed in from every side. One pump became two. Two became three. They pulled the pump from the wash plant to double the power in the pit. Time on the plant fell, but it was the right call. With 3 pumps running around the clock, the team stepped back and let horsepower do what it could not do by hand. 24 hours later, they had moved roughly 10 million gallons out of the cut. The lake dropped. The plan crept back into view. The win was real, but it was not final. The Wolf Cut had more to say. The floor stayed slick. The wall stayed nervous. Every scoop risked another breach. The crew learned the pattern. When you crack permafrost near a pond, the valley remembers the old flow paths and tries to rebuild them through your dig. The only way forward is smart layout and patience. Dig the sump deeper. Keep the filter clean. Watch the pressure against the berm. And accept that some days the best move is to walk away before you lose the entire season in one bad hour. That lesson stayed with the crew as they chased the big totals that would define their year. Because even with the flood, the weigh table told a different story. The ounces stacked up. The numbers reached a level that shocked skeptics. And yet, the money story was more complicated than a single headline. When the season finally settled and the counts were done, Parker's team posted a giant number, 8,118 ounces. That is not a guess. It is a tally pulled from the weigh table and the season total everyone could see. Depending on the price used in the show's math, that total worked out to nearly $14 million in gold. It is the kind of figure that makes people think every problem is solved. The truth is harder. Big totals do not erase the pressure that came before them, and they do not erase the costs that keep showing up after. Here is what those numbers mean on the ground. To hit thousands of ounces, a plant must run clean for long stretches. That means belts holding, screens not blinding, sluice boxes catching clean, and loaders feeding steady without long pauses. It means trucks cycling without waiting lines, roads holding up under heavy loads, and fuel showing up when crews are running through the night. It means the mechanics keeping pumps alive, because no pump means no pit, and no pit means no pay. Even in a record year, parts and time eat revenue. Tires on haul trucks are not cheap. Undercarriage on excavators wears fast in sharp rock. Hoses blow. Motors demand attention. A single breakdown at the wrong hour can cost a day. A bad day can push you behind on the week. Fall too far, and a freeze locks a season's final ounces in the ground until next year. That is why the crew treats every hour like it matters. Because it does. This is also where smart leadership shows. Parker and his lieutenants focused on layout, clean pads, short hauls, good angles for the excavators, and enough sump to stop a flood before it starts. They found pay that held grade across long pushes, not just one lucky pocket. And when the old pit fought back with water, they made the call to shift pumps, drain the lake, and rebuild the plan instead of pretending a half measure would work. The result was a season total that felt like a statement. But totals alone cannot cover a major land bet. To secure the long future, Parker needed more than one huge number. He needed a base, ground that could produce for years. That is where Dominion returned to the center of the story. Dominion is not a quick flip. It is a long plan with a heavy price tag. Committing around $15 million to that ground changed Parker's world overnight. He went from running big to running massive, and the margin for error shrank to almost nothing. The rules of the job stayed the same. Move dirt, feed the plant, drain the water, but the scale of the consequences grew. Miss a week here, and the cost is not just fuel. It is the interest on a dream. The crew felt the load. They had to build pads from scratch, lay out conveyor runs, and get Slucifer into position on a new pad with care and speed. Moving a 90,000-pound wash plant on uneven ground is not easy at the best of times. Doing it under a deadline is a test. Tyson took on heavy responsibility. Mitch pushed to mine a record number of acres in one season. Mark Force, as foreman, had to keep the daily plan tight while the big moves stayed on schedule. Everyone knew the stakes. You either execute or you explain. What made Dominion so tricky was the mix of money and geology. On one side, there were unpaid bills, daily burn, and the push to get gold coming in fast enough to stay ahead of costs. On the other side, there was the ground's pace, the way permafrost, water, and mud force you to slow down just when your budget says speed up. That tension sat in every decision. Open a new cut too fast, and you risk another wolf-style flood. Wait too long, and you miss your ounce target. The balance is brutal, but there were wins. The crew assembled the wash plant piece by piece, set the feeder and conveyor, and brought the system online. They cut new roads so trucks could cycle without bottlenecks. They staged extra pump power so the sump could breathe. They kept a steady flow of pay dirt headed for the hopper. Bit by bit, the site turned from a risk into a working mine. Every cleanup mattered. Every ounce helped buy back a little more time. The result was a run that kept Parker in the fight and turned Dominion from a line on a contract into a real operation with real returns. Even with that progress, the lesson of the year stayed the same. The valley is the boss. The ground decides the pace. The miner decides whether to listen. And the best miners turn those truths into a plan that wins more days than it loses. Here is the clear takeaway from everything you have seen. The Klondike rewards speed, but it punishes rush. Parker's team learned that the hard way and the smart way. The mammoth tusks proved that the pit is not just a place of work. It is a window into time. Those finds are rare, valuable, and real. They remind a crew to respect what the earth is willing to show you if you do not break it by accident. Tony Beats's tusk at Paradise Hill confirmed the pattern across the valley. When one crew hits Ice Age material, others on the same old paths will likely cross it too. That is a cue to plan for colder, wetter, trickier ground. The Wolf Cut proved that water is the silent enemy. A thin berm is not a promise. Permafrost is not a wall you can trust forever. When that layer breaks or an old shaft opens, a fight turns fast. One pump can become three. A dry plan can become a lake. The only answer is smart layout, clean maintenance, and enough patience to back out before pride turns a bad situation into a lost season. Draining roughly 10 million gallons in a day is not a stunt. It is survival. survival when the valley decides to test you. The numbers proved that persistence pays. 8,118 ounces is a mountain of gold by any measure. Turning that into nearly $14 million at season prices is a real outcome, not a wish. But those numbers did not erase the cost of doing business, and they did not solve the long game alone. That is why Dominion matters. Buying that ground around the $15 million mark turned a strong miner into a major landowner. It also turned every week into a scoreboard that counts money and time at the same pace. The message is simple. There is no room for lazy mistakes. There is room for patience, planning, and grit. So what did the dark revelation really reveal? It was not a scandal or a secret. It was a truth that hides in plain sight. The ground can give you gold and trouble in the same shift. It can hand you ancient history and a flooded pit on the same day. It can make you feel rich at the weigh table and broke when the parts bill hits. The miners who last are the ones who accept all of that and keep working with clear eyes. Parker's next seasons will keep testing that mindset. The plan is to move smart, manage water first, and make Dominion pay back the gamble one cleanup at a time. If you want more straight talk like this, fast breakdowns of big finds, big problems, and the quiet decisions that decide a season, subscribe to Gold Era 2.0 so you do not miss the next video. We go deep on what really happens in the pit, how crews fight water and time, and how a single cut can turn a year around. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.